Okay, I'm ready to go. I'm having a chat, and it has to be after 10 o'clock p.m. in Dublin, but I'm having an interview with classical guitarist and composer Santiago Kodela uh, about
Okay.
his 2023 Navona solo album. It's called The Distant Shepherd. It's a suite for guitar. Very, very, very interesting. Here are the movements, and then we'll get on to things. But just to give everybody an idea, The Distant Shepherd, specific movements, specific narratives, I think. Uh, Procession Through the Rain, The Herd's Communion, The Cane, I have questions, Of Distant Rolling Clouds, I thought one thing and realized something else, The Shepherd's Smile, and Towards the Closing Gates. Now, everybody put all your old movies in mind and imagine, you're on the rolling hills and giant slabs of rock of Ireland in in the usual nasty weather situation. You're the shepherd, you have your cane, and you are getting ready to herd the sheep into shelter for the evening, if I understand the suite in a general sort of way. Santiago Kodela, award-winning guitarist and composer. I think I mentioned that. Your works explore various aspects, and we're going to go there, aspects of sound and harmony, adventuring intensely. This is going to drive everybody crazy. Intensely, except maybe I'm the only one, but anyway, you venture intensely into areas of isorhythms, metric modulation, and chord harmonization. I read that after I listened, so I have no idea whether I got anywhere close to understanding what you're up to there, and you will tell it all to us, of course. You won first prize gold medal at the 125th edition of the, tell me how it was. I want to say Fais Jelly, but that couldn't possibly be Italian. It's Irish. What is that?
It's face cold.
Feisteamh, Ireland's largest classical music competition in the category of senior classical guitar. Let's see, you've completed your bachelor's degree. Help, I forgot. Where? At Trinity? No, that was your master's degree of music
Yeah.
and media technologies. That
Yes.
put up some radar when I read that
Well,
about that
some red
degree.
flags.
Well, not red. It just the radar went up because I am expecting and did receive. I don't know what, but something about media technologies makes me understand it's going to be really interesting. That's what I was trying to say. Let's see. Give me the bachelor's degree.
That's the Royal Irish Academy of Music.
Aha. So Ireland and so on, and then something about the Manuel de Falla Superior de Música
Yeah,
in
and that's
Argentina,
where I studied back in Argentina in the
and that was for your
conservatory.
bachelor's, right?
No, no, that was before the bachelor's.
Oh,
I did
studies.
my bachelor's in Ireland.
Okay. Well, I messed that up thoroughly and completely, but I think everybody
Not that
gets
much.
gets the hint. So, how long have you been in Ireland? Because you took that journey at a certain point. I think in your notes you realized and said that you had to go to Europe and figure out what's going on, and then Ireland. Go, tell us.
Well, in April this year, it was 10 years.
Wow.
10 years since I moved here because I actually came here to further my music studies.
To get your master's,
So
yeah. If I'm not,
first I did the bachelor's
that's it.
at
Yes.
the Royal Irish Academy of Music, and then once I finished, I did my master's in Trinity.
And then Ireland seems to have taken pretty care of you. It sounds like you are happy there and having fun. I've seen pictures you've sent. It just looks like it feels comfortable. Or are you longing to get back to Argentina?
Well, actually, I kind of fell in love with Ireland when I first came here, like in February 2013, in holidays to visit my brother,
Aha.
and then that kind of pushed me towards studying here. And once I finished both my bachelor's and my master's, that kind of I already had some sort of network of close
So,
friends and colleagues. So I decided to stay here. Also because I would still like to continue studying, maybe pursue a doctorate, but that would be in the upcoming years. I'm still thinking about it.
but that also it helps to have a brother. who apparently came over before you did, that immigration thing was maybe softened a little bit. The
Yeah,
trauma of it all.
it really kind of like pulled me towards Ireland.
And by the way, I don't hear even the tiniest bit of Irish accent. You'd think 10 years there'd be a little something to your Hispanic accent, but I'm not hearing it.
No, I never got the gist out of it. I only know some words, but I don't think I have an Irish accent.
Oh, I agree. I want to read your kind of explanatory paragraph about the distant shepherd, and then I've got some questions. I may have said this a little bit earlier, but the distant shepherd explores the full timbral and emotive range of the instrument in a solo setting. Yeah, and how we're going to go there in a bit. Also, the colors, if I may just go off script here a little bit. The coloring is incredible. Santiago's performance deftly employs, as I mentioned earlier, isorhythms, metric modulation, and chord harmonization, and he will give us a brief on that through notes and chords. Distant Shepherd offers an evocative portrait of a lone shepherd tending to his flock, as I graphically described a couple minutes ago. And the cover is why I said, what is this? Because there you are with your guitar case in front of you and the cliffs of Ireland wafting off in the district and those gray clouds going. Did you have something to say before we dip into some questions? Or were you saying enough?
Yeah. That cover, I kind of we designed that together with the team, with the design team at Nagona Records.
Yeah.
And I mean, for anyone who has traveled into Ireland's countryside, like they would instantly get that imagery, because once you go like into the west coast of Ireland, like to the cliffs of Moher, County Clare or County Galway. I mean, it's just stunning. I mean, yeah. you could get lost there, and it's kind of like another world. The scenery is simply majestic. So I kind of wanted to kind of portray that sort of imagery, and because I'm super grateful to this country, so I suppose it's kind of some sort of little homage to this beautiful country I'm currently living in.
Okay, now we're going to get to the good stuff, which is what overcame me as a first-time listener. And I'm just going to say that I said to myself, okay, this guy's going to give me a suite of music about the distant shepherd and all, and I read all the movements and stuff, and I thought, okay, and strapped on my belt and was ready to go. And not to say immediately, but it's hard for the imagination to take a snap into your world in the first seconds, because this is a guitar. My head, my brain, my intellect said guitar. What? How? What? What's the meaning of these movements? And then, bam, you got me. And we're gonna talk about that. But I want to ask this kind of cornball romantic question. The imagery is so powerful and the narrative is so fascinating from what I took away anyway, and you're going to help us figure out how close I was or not, was this imagery in my mind about you seeing the cover. I'm seeing you hunkered down, the mists are pouring around you, you're playing under a hood or a tent or something. In other words, getting into the moment, as theater people would say. Is that just a fantasy, or did you do the whole thing from the apartment?
Well, obviously I written all the suites in my at home,
Yeah, the writing has to be at home, of course.
And that was kind of like a process through a couple of, because I wouldn't say that you start and you finish in a month's time. You sometimes you start, you kind of like abandon it for a while, and then you come back. Life happens, and there's always something that's pending, or maybe sometimes you're not in the right mood. But that would have taken me around 2 to 3 months to write it, and obviously then you have to practice it so that you can actually play what you've written. But yeah, I mean, I recorded that in a studio here in Ireland, which I rented myself. I did all the recording and all the editing. I
That was
didn't mix.
exactly my next question. Let's go there, but because what I have in my notes here is the quality of sound on this album, as I told you,
Yeah,
the intimacy of the miking, the clarity of the ambient sound around, which is tricky, I have a feeling. I'm not an acoustician, but if you got to get that exactly right for the reality of the sound of the instrument to come to the audience. Go, give me that
yeah.
whole thing.
So, well, I want to kind of go into kind of like the masters part. Why did I study the masters? And that will kind of like connect with your question. Basically, once I finished my bachelor's in performance, I kind of decided that okay, I like performing, but I also would like to kind of like write my own stuff, and I would like to be able to produce my own music. So instead of pursuing another kind of like performance degree, like a master's in performance, I said I think I will shift towards composition and producing. That's why I did my master's in music and media tech, because I wanted to have control over the recording process and the creative process, so that I would be able to handle my own times at my own pace and not having to be stressed because I paid a recording studio and then my time is running out. So having studied one of the subjects was obviously music production, so that was really interesting for me. Knowing about recording setup, mic setup, which sort of microphones use and stuff like that.
Mm.
And in the past, I already did kind of like smaller pieces, so that kind of served as a build up for to recording this piece. So for in this case, I rented a studio and then I did all the recording and then all the editing, just making sure that I selected the best takes and connected them so there were no evident cuts and you know all the stuff music producers do. But then for the mixing, I for the mixing and mastering, I decided to outsource that because I believe that always bringing in a fresh pair of ears is good,
Ah, good.
because obviously once if you kind of try to undertake all the tasks, you're going to be biased,
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
you
Very
know the
intelligent.
process, you know what's missing, or maybe you think that something is good, but maybe you're missing something that other fresh pair of ears will definitely give you. So for the last couple of years, I've been working with Bob Katz, who is like a legendary mastering engineer. He's from he's a fellow countryman of yours. He lives in Florida, and he's a Grammy Award winning mastering engineer. So I've been basically, learning a lot from him. He's been giving me advice on how to set up, where to record, how to get
Mm.
the best out of the recording and the instrument. And then once I did all the recording and all the editing, I sent him the files, and then he did his magic, as he always does, and his his ear and his technique, and his final product is absolutely pristine.
That just about told everything about this whole bit, but also I want to remind us all that we are this conversation this that we just had is very important to many people, many subscribers, many faculty members, faculty music, collegiate music faculty who are putting out CDs. The idea of getting a handle on things, maintaining control over things, and you did the extra training and study to be able to do that. And then, as you point out very importantly, intelligently passing it on, saying, okay,
Yeah,
have a
this
look,
is
fix it.
this
Yeah.
is as far as I can get. Now I'm gonna let the adults do the good stuff.
There you go. That's exactly the right formula. Well done, and we'll ask if there's anything coming up in a bit. So you answered that question about the quality of sound. I had no clue, of course. that it was you, and then of course some of the greatest. It's probably on the CD somewhere, but one of the greatest master editors. No wonder. Anyway, the sound is just superb, especially for all. And I'm going to get to a question that I have trouble with, for all the detail, especially
Yeah.
and what I mean is not only the technical detail, but the color detail.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah,
wanted to kind of do a little bit of a shout out because there's a really, I won't say famous because famous is a big word, but in Ireland, I think Ireland has one of the today's best guitar makers. They're called O'Leary. They're from Carlow, and ever since I studied at the academy, I've been using their guitars, and their guitars, they kind of like they capture every detail, you know. So it has a good side and a bad side. The bad side is that if you mess up, somebody's gonna realize because the guitar won't let you lie. And the good side is that if you're on the ball, you know, you can get like absolutely beautiful sounds out of those guitars. So you know, I just wanted to make a little bit of fun
that
out
was exactly
because
appropriate because the instrument for any and all of us who are soloists is quite crucial. So thank you. It didn't come into my head to ask that question. Fabulous. So you're saying these are really high quality guitars. You're very happy with the sound of the instruments and so on. Well, there you go. Ireland, it's something maybe about the magic of you land somewhere just right. Sounds like Ireland is where they're going to bury you, if I may say so.
I mean, Ireland's kind of like this little island, kind of like sort of in the middle of the Atlantic, and it's kind of like it's always bombarded with rain and you know crazy weather. But I think the people here are super social and super candid, and they're really nice people altogether.
We because of the character. I hope I get this right without making a fool of myself. But there is an Argentinian, there is a Latino, there is an Hispanic flavor to this CD. It's just part of your character. I presume that you're there in the midst, but there is that part of your history and your character. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about styles, because I have a question somewhere down here about improv. I know there's no improv here, but improv as part of a process, because I keep thinking from what I'm hearing you would meditatively improv for quite a while, let's say on a particular movement or figure or stretch, and then later sort it out and notate. Well, now I know the
Yeah.
sorted out part is absolutely who you are. As a composer, everything is thoroughly sorted out. So I want to ask you about styles of playing, because what I heard as an amateur enthusiast were styles, did I not, maybe Spanish, certain, you know what I mean, dance form styles, the rhythms that are so strict. Am I anywhere close to that? Any understanding what I heard?
No, definitely. Coming back to the improv part, I usually write music. You know, it's a combination between you know writing down the notes, an idea, or and also you know fiddling around in the instrument and you know finding ideas that make sense. Whatever makes sense, I kind of write it down, and whatever doesn't make sense, I kind of discard it. So I try to combine. This is kind of like my process. So guitar plus you know sitting down. And then yes, I mean back in Argentina, besides studying classical guitar, I've also always been intrigued by other styles or other genres other than classical. So I remember before moving to Ireland, I used to take some flamenco lessons with some Spanish guitar player.
Speaking of
So
complicated meters and
yeah,
very
exactly.
structured and so on, yeah.
Yeah,
That's why I asked the question, yeah.
and also I've been taking some guitar lessons with a very famous jazz guitar player from Argentina who kind of like taught me a little bit of about improvisation and you know
Mm-hmm.
how to find myself along the fingerboard. So even though I kind of studied classical music or academic music here in Ireland, I've always been captivated by other styles such as flamenco and jazz. music, because I think they're really, really interesting.
So that would lead to another question because, again, two listenings. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure. The question is about an arc to the composition of this suite. Slap me around if I'm just crazy, but did I you are these leitmotifs that I'm hearing? In other words, I thought the same tune motif, if you like, that opens the piece, ending the piece. If somewhere in there, am I anywhere close? The tunes.
Definitely,
What?
definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Damn, I didn't I didn't have to leave the room. Okay, well, so there's all that structure too. Do I hear you do deliberately repeat what, a couple of tunes, or that one from the opening? It's so haunting. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
it's really haunting.
I try to take ideas that are kind of quite characteristic or easy to remember, at least
Yeah.
from a sonic point of view, and try to play around with them. Present them within different octaves of the guitar, or with different techniques or different tone, maybe closer to the fingerboard or closer to the bridge, just to bring different colors and
Yeah.
aspects into the composition, and sort of make sense out of the connection between the parts. I want the listener to listen to that part and say, oh yeah, I think I heard that a
Oh,
couple
good.
of
Okay, I
movements
got
ago.
it. You succeeded. That is a perfect segue for us to just have a look through the movements. I Again, I had that question I mentioned to you. Maybe I didn't for everybody watching, but I had that question to you about maybe do you in performance segue one movement to another? Is there always a pause between movements? Anything about that? Because I'm looking at Procession Through the Rain, the first movement of the suite, and the Herd's Communion, and they seem. I think you may have mentioned it earlier or to me off camera, how that fit, like the continents fitting together. So,
Yeah, yeah,
Procession Through the
uh,
Rain is the first movement, and then the Herd's Communion. Why don't we combine those two?
definitely. So since the whole suite was kind of like approached holistically, in a holistic manner, so I wanted to I didn't want every movement to start and stop. So once you were kind of approaching the ending of the movement, I wanted to leave a little bit of, like a room, so that people don't kind of pause and go elsewhere and then they come back. So it's kind of like creating that fine line between pausing and stopping. So I
Aha,
wanted
okay,
to.
gotcha. You answered the question. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
So it's like once you finish your you once you feel you finish the movement, say, okay, this kind of left me there hanging. I want to know what's coming next. You know.
Fair enough. My what I do is I do kind of stream of consciousness notes as I'm listening, because on the computer. Here's what I got from Procession Through the Rain. Um, it the lovely opening chords, and then it gets complicated real quickly. I think harmonically and all the rest, it just gets very interesting, and I say to myself, "Nice." And then I feel, and what I'm trying to get at with my own word combinations is that this is a narrative. This is putting us in on the hillside, taking the sheep home, right? So I mean, there has to be, I'm thinking, that kind of thing. So I feel that I am hearing somehow a tension in the air, whatever that means, and however you compose it, which reminds me of just a rolling clouds environment. I studied in England for 3 years, and there were plenty of those roiling, plenty of that
Yeah.
tension in the air. Wonderful colors and tonal tweaks.
Yes.
Terrific. Repeating two-note figure, and you mentioned that about repeating figures. Yeah, it's kind of like a repeating two-note figure. Uh, Starts to agitate and so on. Are those?
Yeah.
Oh, and then there's one other question. I hope I don't get in trouble. Do you work in quarter tones at all in this movement? I was hearing so
Yeah.
close that
Some there are a little bit on some string bends to get that sensation. So
gotcha, because it could not have possibly been other than intentional. Thank you. You answered that question for me. Okay.
yeah.
The Hero's Communion. Uh, The Herd's Communion, also the hero, a shepherd would have to be. That's my way of getting out of that one. Anyway, the Herd's Communion. Let me just do this one. There's a fragment, is there, from Procession in there? A little, I can't remember, I don't, two listings I can't quite remember, but again, I'm starting to hear fragments I am thinking, even by the second, in references. A lovely tune, again, twitched here and there harmonically, which I just love. Just the little unexpecteds that sort of are.
Yeah,
Go.
that moment kind of, well, I would just want to talk briefly about Procession Through the Rain. That's kind of like the opening, it's like the storm, the storm is building up, and at the beginning is see these big chords that kind of represent the big clouds forming in the distant skyline, and then
the tension in the air.
Exactly. It kind of you know something bad is coming, and you can see the raging clouds in the distance, and then okay, everything kind of like settles down, and then you start, and then it slowly builds up until kind of like the storm finally breaks. And then the First Communion introduces, well, the ending of Procession Through the Rain introduces kind of like one of the main motifs of the piece, and which is kind of like very ceremonial, very kind of like mournful.
I have fragment from Procession. I thought maybe I had discovered something about a ceremonial sort of tune. Excuse me for interrupting.
Yeah, no problem. And then basically on the second movement, I try to play around with that theme, and harmonize it like in strange ways, and then also maybe sometimes presented within an arpeggio, or sometimes presented within like a two voice counterpoint, and then also transpose it, or better, I play around within the octaves. So it maybe starts in the high E, then it goes to the one octave down, and then another octave down. So I kind of play around the entire fingerboard with the same theme.
And also the use of yummy harmonics in the end. Just the color and the instrument very well, and how it can just seduce an audience. And that bit of yummy harmonics I thought was great. The corny word, but it works to me. Yummy. At the end of and at the end, is that there for mystery? I ask myself. Is it contentment? Is it looking up at the constellations? The magic of those harmonics that bring that movement to an end. The Herd's Communion out there in up on the hills and whatever. That was.
Yeah, it's kind of like gazing into this wonderful scenery, and kind of like realizing the insignificance of one before this such a beautiful scenery, especially if you are thinking about the Irish fjords and the huge distant clouds, ready to engulf you in rain.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's part of what has me so intrigued about this album. There is no choice. We must come with you on this journey. Third movement, the cane. Let me speak a little bit about it. And I have multiple stars after it. And again, what I'm talking about is your use of imagery and painting scenes. Okay, what I came away with, it's of course a narrative. The cane, there's got to be some reason, and of course it's the shepherd's cane. But so visualization. How can a guitar get me to visualize all of this? Something about hillsides, sublime calm, some fascinating harmonic movement, all good. And then there's an interruption. The herdsman taking authority briefly. That's the way I read it. Then the idyll continues, and then again an outburst of authority. I'm thinking what I'm trying to say is what I saw in my mind's eyes is the shepherd and his flock, and a couple get out of hand, and he does a quick back in on two occasions. Okay, tell me what your vision was.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about that movement is kind of like, it might sound difficult to play, but it's mainly arpeggios, and I like to, for that moment, I kind of stayed mainly within the lower register of the instrument. So for me, like the cane is kind of like the shepherd's, main tool on how to tend to his flock. So I wanted to make like a moment where, you know, all the glory of the shepherd's duties were kind of like carried out by the cane, and you know, as such, there are parts within the movement that there's a lot of tension, especially when there are some aggressive
Two
rasgueados,
movements anyway, yeah, that I heard that were very interesting,
very
fascinating.
very aggressive rasgueados, and a lot of tension that go into like really, you know, dissonant harmonies, which create a lot of tension before kind of going into the calmness. So it's kind of like, you know, portraying this image of this kind of like wise and old shepherd that even though he might be wise, he can also be, you know, mean when he needs to.
And controlling.
So
I mean,
it's kind
he's
of,
in charge of those
yeah,
sheep. I mean,
it's kind
okay.
of like a dichotomy, you know.
Loved it, and I hope you understand what I'm really saying, which is that you have succeeded in taking us on this journey, or me anyway, and that's what I've been trying to describe since the beginning of the interview or something. The idea that this one, your album, I'm going to really put this one on and let it play in my apartment while I do something else, or even while I just stare out the windows. It's that powerful. So much
Yeah,
success. And also, by the way, you mentioned about the difficulty. It never crossed my mind that anything I was hearing was in any way difficult, and that's about you. It never crossed. I had never had for a second any question about technique. It was just there, as clearly are a first prize winner. So that's my compliment to you. But it never occurred. And then you
thank
mentioned,
you.
and I thought, difficulty it never occurred to me. And usually I look for that because, of course, those are always sis. But the compliment is I hope, well taken.
It
Okay,
is, it is.
last movement. Oh no, we're at the fifth, the shepherd's smile. And all I can say here is that you have you described on the guitar the shepherd's smile, the contentment, and again, what is the stylistic model? Because I can hear something kind of Argentinian, and there's a kind of ambling pace and rhythm. Tell us about this wonderful movement.
Yeah, just to correct you, this is we missed the fourth movement, which is
Did we? Okay.
of distant rolling clouds. Sorry.
Hang on. Let me find it. Oh, distant rolling clouds. Oh my God, the most important.
Yeah.
Sorry, I sped up too far. Movement. Let's start over. Movement 4 of distant
Yes.
rolling clouds. And again, the tenseness is there, and you've made clear that there's something going on from the very beginning, something coming. But I found in my mind's eye, more of an. I thought, okay, it'll be Beethoven all over again. We're going to have the storm of the Pastoral Symphony or something. And instead, what I came away with in my mind, having been teased by you so effectively as an imagist, was it's off in the distance. The
Yeah,
rolling. Go.
this is more like kind of like a meditative and reflective movement. I mean, you kind of feel like there's kind of like a storm coming, but you only kind of feel the droplets, you know, the initial droplets. You don't feel the entire storm. So it's kind of like a serene movement when you know it's about to rain, but it never truly gets there. This is the main movement is kind of like a four finger arpeggio figure.
That rolling
Um,
style.
yeah,
That's why I was
it's kind of
imagining
like
clouds rolling a bit. Yeah.
yeah, it's like you're just gazing into the distance and see how the clouds they pass you by, and you kind of let yourself into the scenery. So this one is a little bit more sublime and more serene movement when compared to well
Which surprised me.
to their
That's what I was getting at. I was expecting, a rainstorm, and then I got a much more sophisticated bit of imagery in my head from you. Right. Excuse me for jumping in there.
no problem.
Okay. Let me just describe a little something. What I also loved, because this was part of my imaging in that movement, was there's propulsion, uh, then slowing, then the
Yeah,
propulsion again comes up, and then it's up in the heights. I mean, you were just like distant clouds,
yeah.
descending, then up and away.
Well, for me, this kind of like resembles uh, basically what Irish weather is. If you lived in Ireland, you know that probably in the very same day you get like sun, then rain, then hailstorm, then back to sun, then it's raining for like pouring rain, then it stops. So it's kind of like is that ever ever menace of the rain that is about to hit you, but it doesn't.
Lovely, lovely, because you took me right back to my days in London, and that was much lower on the on the globe than Dublin. Um, let's see. So there, but where are we? Shepherd's Smile now? Are we at Shepherd's
Yeah.
Smile? Okay, good. I was explaining there's that kind of stylistic model, something Argentinian, something Latin, Hispanic, whatever. Tell me if I'm all wet on that one. But also this wonderful ambling pace is the way I describe it, and rhythm. By the way, it's a nice tune. Your own, I
Yeah,
presume. Go.
actually, well, this one is the only movement that it's in a major key. So
Oh,
in classical guitar, it's very common in composers such as Targa or Fernando Sor that parallel modulation. So you go from D minor, and you parallelly modulate to D major. So how they say that major tonalities are like the happy ones. That's why kind of like the
so
title of the movement is the Shepherd's Smile. And also for
by the way, it
me
feels
this
it now that you mentioned it. It feels it on the album, as you just described. That is the only major tonality apparently, and I thought I was hearing more major stuff in the earlier movements, but that's why it really jumps out. This
yeah
deliberate uh,
yeah
cheerfulness of a major tonality. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
yeah
Shepherd
yeah
smile.
it's just to generate a little bit of contrast and depart away you know from the ever embracing storm. So
Only people who
so
have lived on the island know what you mean by ever embracing storm. Yeah, I
yeah
remember. Okay, you're on
so
the other one, but
for me the Shepherd's Smile is kind of like you know you're kind of like there, and then you kind of see the distant ray of light, kind of cutting through a cloud. So it's kind of like the shepherd knowing it's kind of like the good times, the bonanza times are coming his way. So the idea of that is kind of like shift towards a more kind of like steady and very easy to follow kind of like tune. But actually this one was one of the most difficult movements because I employ a series of isorhythms on the bass.
here we
Well,
go. Here we go.
I it's kind of like there's kind of like an isorhythm that follows
Hmm.
through the entire movement, but then over that isorhythm I put like a melody. So putting all that together, it was kind of tricky because you have to be sure that you are kind of like emphasizing the isorhythm and then also bringing out the melody. So it was kind of like
Hmm.
playing two different parts uh, by only one person.
Rubbing tummy, tapping head, kind
Yeah,
of thing. Yeah.
exactly. And I kind of I've listened from friends and from colleagues that that was one of their favorite movements because it was kind of like yeah, I can feel this. I can feel the tune.
Okay, and I have a question for you. All that's fine and dandy, but then there's a sudden stop that blew my brains out. Everything stopped suddenly, quite deliberately, as I'm sure you're going to tell us, for a couple of seconds, just total silence. And then this descending into, I would have taken it to be a minor mood. Okay,
Yeah,
descending into this minor mood for a bit. Fascinating, wonderful. Then with a slap, the Ambler moves on with a smile. That was the way I read it, because that's that
yeah,
slap on the on the top of the guitar, I presume, or on the side of it.
yeah,
Go.
yeah. It's kind of like you know, you're you're kind of anticipating the return to the minor tonality. So within the major movement, it's kind of like major, a really small passage of a minor tonality, and back to sorry, and back to major. So
Sure.
that little passage is kind of like a little glimpse into the future, knowing that for the sixth final moment, we're coming back to the to the fast-paced minor tonalities.
Aha. Uh, I agree with you absolutely, totally, because the last movement towards the closing gates, I asked you this corny question about metaphor, I think off camera, but towards the closing gates, and of course it's, on the surface, it's more on the surface than anywhere else. I love subtext, but it's the herdsman, he's the shepherd, and he's taking the flock in for the evening. So towards the closing gates, get them all in the gates so the wolves don't eat them, stuff like that. Uh, and then I wanted to ask you, did you create this scene in your head of shepherds putting their sheep in, or did you have some occasions in your walks and stuff to see it, or are you too much of a Dubliner?
Uh, no, I mean, obviously, I wanted the end of the suite to be kind of like glorious, and the beginning of the beginning of the moment, it has like really weird bends and kind of like this this Turkish like sounding
And it's a very strong introduction, too, by the way.
yeah.
Uh, yeah.
So it's kind of like a build up into these arpeggios. So I wanted to like wrap up the entire journey of this shepherd that had to endure across a very challenging weather, and the sheep just spreading around, and it's kind of like a metaphor for life, after all you're going through, at the end you kind of you reach your destination. So it's kind of like, okay, I finally made it here. And I think
That was, by the
the
way, brilliant because it just spoke of your own immigration to Ireland.
yeah, it's like, well, obviously having moved to Ireland really helped me, develop a sense of perspective. And once you live away from home, you kind of really start to understand how things really work when you step out of your comfort zone. So this is kind of like, kind of like the wrap up of a journey. In this case, the shepherd is kind of like, ensuring that the flock has arrived to its destiny safe and sound. And
It's all
so
business. That's what I wrote
yeah,
down. It's all business.
exactly.
Somehow you communicate that in your writing. Yeah.
And then I don't want to spoil it too much, but towards the end, maybe some would expect, a really, closing chord, something that kind of like wraps up everything perfectly. But for me, the way I see life is that, or at least this is how I usually feel whenever I finish something. Is like, I always feel that maybe I could have done something a little bit better. So I always kind of like finish with this bittersweet taste in my mouth, knowing that even though what I did was good, I'm always thinking, okay, but maybe I could have done this a little bit better in this way or that way. I'm kind of like, uh, I want to sound cliche, kind of like I'm a perfectionist, but I believe there's always room for improvement. So
Yes,
I always
and
kind of
with any creative endeavor, if I may say so, my reviews uh, drive me crazy. They take me forever to write because now I know how important it is, after all these years, to arrange words in a way that captures the imagination and so on, just as you know how to arrange notes for the guitar. Uh, I hope I'm not giving anything away, but I can say this about the ending, and it's a very distinct ending. Again, there's a pause, and then there's this postlude, if you will. Um, I love the ending. That's what I wrote there, and I go on a bit. I don't think I'm going to give anything away, except you mentioned. Um, well, I'll say this at my last words, having heard this. I love the mystery of those last bars. If that's bittersweet, there you go. Just in
yeah,
time for the
yeah.
fire engine, I think. Maybe he's going off on another street. Let's see. What? Do you have anything burning to tell me more about this album? I think we've pretty much gone over it, but maybe I've missed something big.
Well, I just maybe like to say that I got the inspiration to do this piece of music uh, because while I was studying back at the Royal Irish Academy of Music, one of the pieces I learned for my degree was Koyun Baba, which is kind
Oh,
of like a very well-known piece within the classical guitar repertoire. And there's some story that says that Koyun Baba means like a shepherd in Turkish. So for me, this piece was kind of like it was inspired by it, and it has some elements or some resemblances. So
mm,
that's kind of like why it kind of it's kind of called the distant shepherd because and they kind of everything was connected because you live in Ireland, you have these beautiful fjords and the sheep and the shepherds and everything kind of like connected, classical guitar, Colin Baba, Ireland, the distant shepherd, so everything made sense.
absolutely amazing how, hang on, there goes another big truck. Absolutely amazing how that works, how the creative process works. It's not an accident. uh, Nothing is an accident in terms of the mind and how it functions. And when you are using your mind to create these works of art, it's just amazing to me. You just mentioned probably four sub-basements and subtexts that are a whole other interview, but just how this whole thing works is absolutely fascinating. Are you, well, no, you know how to do it. Are you getting ready for another project?
Well, I always have project in the pipeline. Actually, if I may say so, I'm starting a classical guitar duet with one of my academy colleagues called Oscar, who's also a very talented guitar player, and he also has won the Face Code, and especially he's kind of like a beast playing back. So we've been doing some recordings, and we're hoping to start creating and writing our own music for this project, and we hope to start gigging soon around Ireland. I think it's a very exciting opportunity, given that there aren't many classical guitar duos here in Ireland, so we're
Ooh,
looking forward to that.
nice, 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 nice. Once again, uh, something about "Kissed by the Irish." I don't know, but it sounds like you are in heaven. I mean, it sounds like everything's percolating just perfectly for you. What a great chat! I've been kind of anxious to chat with you this morning. You know, you're working up to our getting together for all the reasons that I hope we've kind of covered a bit. It's a mesmerizing, a fascinating, a virtuosic, a fully imaginative uh, piece of art in this wonderful suite. Uh, the Distant Shepherd suite for guitar. Thanks, by the way, at the very end for helping me with the distant part. Wonderful. I'm talking with classical guitarist and composer Santiago Kodela in Dublin. Many, many thanks for staying up late, and it's been great. Wonderful. Fascinating. Thank you.
Well, and I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for this opportunity and to help, promote classical guitar and classical slash contemporary music because we know it needs to be promoted, and I think it's a great efforts you're making in making this happen.
Thanks very much, and it's also a great pleasure for me to meet so many fabulous musicians all over the world. It's just wonderful. Many thanks. See ya.
Okay.